Grief doesn't keep a calendar. Anxiety doesn't clock out after 5. Depression doesn't care if it's your busy season. But support can still fit into your life. With Grow, you can find a therapist who meets you where you are. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions. You can search by insurance, provider specialty, treatment methods, and more to find a therapist who works for you. And if it's not the right fit, switching is easy. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Find therapy on your time. Evenings, weekends, and cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/ACAST today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/ACAST. growtherapy.com/ACAST. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
At Capella University, learning online doesn't mean learning alone. You'll get support from people who care about your success, like your enrollment specialist who gets to know you and the goals you'd like to achieve. You'll also get a designated academic coach who's with you throughout your entire program. Plus, career coaches are available to help you navigate your professional goals. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. And the much, much more today is battery talk. I got a chance to sit down with Veronika Wright. Some of you may know her as Electrified Veronika, but she does more than just that. She is the founder of Electrification Academy. She is a speaker, a battery tech consultant. Again, she's a content creator, and she's also an author. She wrote the book, The Drive to Electric, How Innovative Minds Are Shaping Our Future. We didn't even get a chance to talk about her book, so that's why I'm going to plug it up front here because I'm a bad podcast host for not mentioning that. Our conversation today runs the gamut. Veronika and her husband are converting a Jeep to an electric vehicle, which was a really interesting conversation. We talk a little bit about battery production, and then we jump into what Electrification Academy is and what they do over there.
Grief doesn't keep a calendar. Anxiety doesn't clock out after 5. Depression doesn't care if it's your busy season. But support can still fit into your life. With Grow, you can find a therapist who meets you where you are. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions. You can search by insurance, provider specialty, treatment methods, and more to find a therapist who works for you. And if it's not the right fit, switching is easy. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Find therapy on your time. Evenings, weekends, and cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/ACAST today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/ACAST. growtherapy.com/ACAST. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
And before we get to the interview, I do need to let you know that we recorded this at 7 o'clock in the morning, my time, 8 o'clock Veronika's time. And in the morning time, that's when my kids practice their instruments. So you may hear some flute in the background. You're definitely going to hear some violin. And then you may or may not hear the vacuum cleaner. I'm going to do my best to take some of that stuff out. It's not throughout the whole interview, but there is some in the beginning. So I just want to let everybody know that does occur when I'm talking. I like I said, I try to minimize it as much as possible. All right. Now that you know about that, let's go ahead and welcome Veronika to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm super stoked about this. Now, I will give you a nice warm introduction at the beginning, but before we do that, do you want to tell people just kind of a little bit about your background and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Veronika Wright. I am an absolute battery nerd. I have been in the lithium ion battery industry for about 10 years. I am a physicist. I have a PhD in physics, so quite technical background. I've worked in the corporate world for a couple years, so really on designing battery cells, modules, packs for different applications, electric vehicles, as well as stationary energy storage system, and developed this passion for lithium ion batteries, for that technology as such. And then 5 years decided to do my own thing, became a consultant, started a brand called Electrified Veronika, where I do lots of public outreach and communication. But my main business is really consulting, strategic and technical guidance for companies along the battery value chain. And as of this year, I started a new company, Electrification Academy, which I think we'll talk about later.
We will. And it's interesting. My son at 7 years old had to do a talk on somebody he admired. And he chose Albert Einstein. And up until recently, he's 13 now. Up until recently, his whole goal was to be a theoretical physicist. Like that, he's changed a little bit now that he's older. But yeah.
This is very uncommon at that age, I would say. So when I decided to do physics, I was much older, but I love that.
Yes, my wife and I didn't even know what a theoretical physicist was.
So I am one. I would say I am one because my PhD was really in theoretical solid state physics. And I will say, there's a lot of talk about physicists in general. I personally believe it just gives you the foundation to do pretty much anything in life. So I love that I have studied physics because you just get to learn the fundamentals of pretty much anything. It gives you the confidence and power to understand anything you want. And I think you can take it anywhere. So I very much recommend it, even though it's also very nerdy and but that's kind of the fun part.
Yeah, when my wife was in college, physics was one of her favorite classes. But we just went to my kids' high school for like the kind of orientation because they're going to go into high school next year. And one of the classes that they offer at the junior and senior level is physics. And I went to a very small high school. Like you got basic science classes. So I think it's really cool that we're seeing, I don't know if we'd call it more advanced, but different disciplines of science into the high school space, which I think is neat. All right. Kind of sidebar. What kind of sparked your interest? What is it about batteries that you think that's so interesting?
Right. So I would say that, when I finished my studies and I joined the corporate world in the battery team, it was an accident. So I didn't look for something like that. It just happened to me. But as I learned about this technology and especially batteries, lithium ion batteries and all its application, what excites me about it is that there is a lot of unknowns, that there's still a lot to discover, a lot that we don't understand. Batteries for me are a little bit like humans because they change um, while they kind of live. So it's not one static thing. They kind of age, they change their behavior. And this is why I think it's so exciting to look at them across the life cycle, from how can we best manufacture them and use them in, for example, electric vehicles, but also when do we take them out and probably reuse them for another application, and how do we recycle them? It's like this whole ecosystem that excites me. And there's so much that we can still do and learn, new business models. It's just exciting to me that there is unknowns at the same time, a huge demand and growth of this sector in all sorts of markets.
Yeah, it is nutty. Like for me, it is very difficult to stay up on the different chemistries and technology as a enthusiast, right? So it's I was super excited. I'm going to fan out for just a second. I was super excited that you returned my email and you came on because I was like, oh man, I would love to get nerdy into some of this stuff and learn more. So And I know the audience, the community that is built around this podcast, they are also super nerdy. So it's going to be super exciting. But before we get into battery tech, I want to talk about your Gilmore Girls Jeep conversion.
Yes. What do you want to talk about? This is a
Well,
long
let's start
story.
off with why. Okay, my two daughters, and my wife love Gilmore Girls. So
Right.
I have seen lots of episodes. I'm not as much in love with that show as they are, but I do recognize that it is a good show and it's interesting. What? Somebody's vacuuming. I'm so sorry. What was it about? I'm going to mute myself in a second. What was it about that the Gilmore Girls Jeep that you wanted to kind of recreate?
Yes. I mean, for me, I'm from Austria. I just live in the US for 5 years now. So, but when you grow up in Europe, you watch TV, right? And you see the life in America. And this is kind of a funny thing that you only understand when you're not American, when you're in Europe. So you watch so much that's like different than your own world, and you create this weird bond to this American world. And I did this through the Gilmore Girls show, so I could relate to that, and it was just exciting to see that. And I just loved that show and just grew up with it. And then later, I moved to the US and started my own business as Electrified Veronika. I mean, the brand EV just forced me, like, I cannot drive a gas car, right? That would be impossible. And at that time, now we're like almost 6 years back, there was also no electric vehicles that I liked at that time. You really have to think a little bit back. There was not a lot of options. And there was a situation where, maybe a little bit of background that you should know. So I'm a theoretical physicist, which means I'm typically not very hands-on, and I've not done a lot of hands-on things. But together with my husband, we actually just installed a trailer hitch on our car at that time. And I did that and was under the car, and I was like, this is kind of fun. So I like that part, being hands-on. And then two things together, I'm just randomly saying, do you think we can convert a Jeep to electric? And he's like, sure. Well, this is the story. One day later, we go on LinkedIn and we're like, does anybody have a 99 Jeep Wrangler in that certain color that they have on Gilmore Girls? Match.
That's exciting. And then when I was talking to somebody about just kind of overall like home projects yesterday, and he had to build a fence. And I was like, what was the hardest part of building the fence? He's like, starting and figuring out what I wanted to do. Like, he's like, I don't want to it was a big fence too. He's like, I don't want to get halfway done and then figure out, oh, I completely mismeasured, or I didn't line this out correctly, or I'm on somebody else's property line. And so it took him literal weeks before he started the project, because he was just like kind of consumed with, I don't want to mess this up. How was that for you?
Right. So I will say that this is my strength, getting prepared, creating a plan, looking at all the options from, an architecture perspective. How would we go about which type of electric motor, voltage level battery, like the whole design preparation piece was fairly easy, I would say, for us. I mean, I work in this industry. I have seen a lot. I've learned a lot. My husband works in this industry, so that helps, right? So this whole figuring out what type of electric powertrain we want to have, and going through all the options and doing some design and simulation before we even started to work on it hands-on, that was the easy part for me. The harder part for us is the actual integration work. And here I'm speaking more so on, making all these individual components that we carefully chose work together, because nobody has ever done that in that way before. And so I certainly underestimated, the controls and like programming and all that stuff that needs to happen, that an electric motor talks to the BMS, talks to the VCO, talks to the everything, and all of it works together.
Yeah. So, what about fitting every component into the Jeep form factor?
Right.
Because one of the things we talked about a little bit about ARC motors before we started recording. One of the things they do is they do a complete scan of the vehicle before
Yep,
they even start. Is that something you did?
absolutely. So the Jeep is possibly the worst vehicle that you can electrify because it is so space constrained. Like it's a small car, first of all. Then think of the size, the shape of the whole vehicle. It's not very efficient either. And so there's not a lot of room where you can place things. So, um, but as still, again, I would say that was not a challenge because we just looked at all the different options and then we came out with what we think is the best. And along the way, yes, we also actually did a whole scan. So we had a company called Hexagon come in. They did a whole scan of our vehicle, of the chassis, of everything. So then we could go ahead and take this into the modeling and really start figuring out where we want to place things.
That's awesome. That is a really fun, like that's a really fun uh, project to do with your spouse, obviously, but it's also like just kind of like from, hey, I really want to do this to I'm actually doing this. Where are we in the process now?
Right. So I will say on top of that, like deciding to do this, actually doing this, like the biggest pressure that we put on ourselves was going out there and putting it on YouTube.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
you know, that way you're really accountable for everything. And as we go and we do this for the first time and we put it out there and all at a sudden there is like 50,000 people who watch that. And I'm like, this is nuts. This is crazy. Putting yourself out there like that added another layer, which I enjoyed, but also a little more stress and time that went into, all the preparation of how to film it and how to present it and how to research it and explain it in a way. But I think that also helped us because once you really have to get in the position of an explainer, you really have to understand everything. So that was a good thing. Where are we today? We have a 2.5-year-old.
Yeah,
So my major learning when you do a project like this, maybe don't get pregnant along the way because then you won't complete. No.
yeah,
But what happened is, we were pretty successful in figuring out what we want to do. We actually had a prototype running and we took it to SEMA. That was 2 years ago.
oh, that's cool.
And then we came back and a couple weeks later, our daughter was here. And so since then, our life has changed a lot. The time that we put into the Jeep at nights and evenings, because it was a side project, right? That's dedicated to our daughter now. But I will say that now, and everybody that has kids, they will understand that we're getting into a stage where she grew out of that baby stage needing 100% attention from us all the time. So we're actually getting back into it with new partners or with, a fresh concept. Um, Maybe just to say something that where did we end and why did we decide not to actually stick with what we have? So anybody that has maybe watched that on YouTube and we've shared pretty much everything, right? So we have even like on top of this being a very difficult and first time thing to do, we have also designed our own battery system, which is nuts. Like, all the other conversions, they would at least at some point take existing modules of a Tesla or something that, it's somebody professional company has built it. But so in our case, and that was the tricky part about the Jeep and also the motor that we chose that had a certain voltage level and then the space constraints, the only option at that time was making our own batteries. And so what we did is we got old Mustang Mach-E batteries or a used Mustang Mach-E battery, and we took it apart down to the cell level, which is nothing that anybody should ever do in their garage. And then we rebuilt our own modules based on those requirements that we had. So this was an amazing experience, but the hardest part, of course, was making this safe, making the thermal management work and everything. And so it's definitely not a solution that's scalable or anybody else would do exactly like that. And since we got so much traction with this project and so many people who wanted to do the same, we were really thinking, okay, no, we have to take a different path where this could be something that others can really do too. And so now we're just about to really reconsidering, okay, how can we make this so it's kind of easy for others to do the same thing? And yeah, it will still take a little more time until we have a real update, but it's not dead.
That's fantastic. If other than not getting pregnant in the middle of the process, what are the biggest lessons learned from that?
I mean, it's a crazy project. It's something you're essentially playing OEM, right? I mean, you're in that way doing the same thing that a Ford, a GM, Jeep themselves, Stellantis is doing with two people in the garage. And my main lesson is, I think because of our background, my husband's and my background, the requirements that we have set for this project was really OEM level requirements because we're working in this industry. But this was absolutely unrealistic with just two people in the garage. So as we go ahead, we definitely lower those requirements. We'll lose some range. We'll probably that's the only thing actually that we will lose range. But we will make it work. So I mean, major learnings for us is, our expectations were way too high. Probably we should have gone with a little bit easier solution that doesn't tick all the boxes, because we really were like going into this, we want to have it still two-wheel, four-wheel drive, right? Because there's other conversions where they have skipped that, but we wanted all the things that a traditional Jeep can do. We wanted this still, and it to be better and to have that range. And that's just, it was too much.
Yeah, I always overcommit myself pretty much to everything, right? Yesterday I was busy all day until 5 o'clock, and I had nothing really pressing other than one meeting, So it's like I completely get that. Like you want the best, and the thing that I take away from those moments when I overcommit and I'm like, oh, I am way in over my head, is I always come out of it learning something. I always come out of it learning something that I can apply to something else. So I do have a friend that would see that kind of a thing as a failure. Actually, I was just talking to him yesterday about that. And I was like, no, those aren't, because he was talking about himself. And I was like, those aren't failures. Like, you're learning. And did you get to the end? No, but you're still learning and you could apply to it. And he's only 22 years old. So,
Right.
For him, a failure is completely different than me, which I'm 51.
Right.
So it's totally different perspectives, but you get to learn no matter what. And then you take that into your job and all the other things that go with that. So, okay, so the Jeep is awesome, but I want to talk a little bit about emerging battery technologies. And I'm going to make this a very open-ended question. What battery chemistries are you excited about right now?
So, I mean, maybe this is a little bit different than what you and the audience would expect, but I'm not so excited about any chemistry. What
Okay.
I want and need, and I think this industry and we in North America and as well as in Europe need, is a chemistry, a cell, a company that can scale their operations. So when I talk about what needs to happen in this industry and what I'm excited about, it's not so much about a new chemistry material that can save the world, but it's more like using what we have, which is NMC, which is more so LFP, cathode chemistry, and I can talk about this a little bit more, and then scale operations so we can get our supply up and running locally in North America, in Europe. So, that whole relying on Asia can kind of phase out a little bit. So I know that's a little bit maybe different answer than you expected, but I think it's very, very important to state that, especially from somebody who is in this industry for so long, because people always expect me to say, oh, just wait until we have this and then all the problems are solved because it's going to be like a 2-minute charge and this and that. But that's not what we need to do, and that's not realistic.
No, I love that. Okay, let's pull that thread. I want to know, how do you think we do this? And I honestly, I already told you I'm an enthusiast, but just a dumb firefighter in general. But so for that, how do we do that? What path forward? What steps do we need to make as a battery industry to do that?
Right. So there's a lot here, but I think this ties into what we talk about later. And my mission with Electrification Academy is really, and I like that you brought up those lessons learned before, is sharing lessons learned, right? So what we have seen in the last 5 years, it's lots of failure in this industry in North America and in Europe. We've seen startups that were super motivated. They wanted to make this next, or the first, being the first one that supplies local battery cells to industries like EVs or stationary energy storage systems. And we have seen them fail. So if you have been in this industry, go back 5 years, everybody is throwing money at you. They so much believe in what we're doing here, and just give them the money and they will make it happen. Well, we did that and it has not worked. So now we're at a tipping point where we still need batteries, but we don't have a lot of companies who can actually do that today. So what we have to focus on right now is a business model and a way of working together to locally build battery cells, which means we have to choose chemistries and processes that are scalable, as well as we have to go upstream, which means, where do we actually get those materials from to create the anodes, the cathodes, the actual electrodes for the cells that we make, and create this ecosystem locally in different parts of the world. And there is one, and that might get a little bit deep now, but if we look at battery cell manufacturing for any kind of application today, lithium-ion batteries, it's like 3 things that you do. It's like what a gigafactory is. It's 3 things. It's building the electrodes, so the anode sheets, the cathode sheets, and then you buy the separator, and then you build that. That's the first part. Then you assemble the cell, be it prismatic or pouch cell, or you roll it up in cylindrical. And then that's what's called self-finishing, which means you cycle them for the first time and you make them ready so you can actually use them and integrate them into modules and packs. And historically, actually all over the world, this has been one thing, one gigafactory doing the whole vertical integration of cell manufacturing. What is that's something that I would say I'm excited about, is what I see happening, but not being talked about a lot, and we need to talk about this, is the foundry model for electrode manufacturing. So I don't know if you're familiar with the foundry model, but it's something that the semiconductor industry has adopted a while ago, where they, what it means for the battery industry is you extract that first part, the electrode manufacturing, which is actually, first of all, the hardest part because so many things can go wrong. Second, it's the one where you need the highest investment and capital, like we're talking millions and millions and hundreds of millions. And yeah, so you take this part and you actually take it out from a gigafactory and you build your own foundry. You build your own company that just makes electrodes to supply to companies who assemble them and who then finish them. That type of business model has not been applied yet. There is a couple companies, like there's JR Energy in Korea, who started doing that successfully, and they're now selling only electrodes to companies who assemble and finish. And there's one in Michigan who are just about to start that. And there's a couple, I think they're starting to think about it. But what it would help us is not everybody then needs to have this huge capital investment and those learnings. Like, you need such expertise to perfect electrode manufacturing. So if just a couple companies focus on that, perfect it, scale that can help us scale the whole industry.
So if I'm understanding, like, if you take that part out of the gigafactory and create your own foundry, because that is a very complicated process. Everything that happens in that gigafactory now is simplified, and then these companies can focus specifically on the electrode, and that's then nothing else, pretty much.
Right.
With that foundry.
Right. So that's a new model that some portion of the industry believes is extremely exciting. It has a couple I wouldn't say downsides, but challenges, like, the whole IP also of a battery sits in the electrode. So that's definitely something that needs to be figured out, and was a reason why a couple US-based cell manufacturers have not gone that route, because they wanted this IP for themselves. But I believe we're at a point we can't do this anymore, because we already failed. We're already behind. If we don't get together and do this together, then I don't think we're ever going to be in a position to be the actual cell maker, and we'll always buy from Asia.
So a long time ago, I worked in Micron, and I worked in one of the plants in Idaho where they made motherboards and RAM chips. There was a storm, I think it was in Asia, and it knocked out a whole Micron plant at that time. And RAM prices jumped through the roof. And then it was also very difficult, because at that time I was also building computers for other people, and it became difficult to even get RAM, because everybody, I don't know if they were panic buying or what was happening, but they were expensive and it was hard to get. If we limit the foundries for the electrode, what happens if we have a catastrophic event, or tariffs, or trade wars and all that other stuff? Are we able to kind of navigate that? Because not all the pieces are going to come from one specific country, even though it's being made in that country.
Right. I mean, this is essentially what you're describing is the challenge that we have today. Just one level up with the cell. Like, the same thing and the same problems exist today. If I want to make a module, then, actually selecting and choosing and being supplied by cells, it's like the same situation. You just take it like one level down. But I think it can help us to be faster now and scale up our process, and step by step bring the supply chain to North America. Because right now what happens, especially LFP, is becoming the dominant chemistry. Not only it has always been for stationary energy storage systems, but now also for electric vehicles, which is good. But there is almost no cell maker in the US who supplies LFP. So it's all coming from Asia. So at the moment, we get all the cells from there. What could happen next is a couple companies in the US who only focus on cell assembly and finishing, they still buy the electrode from overseas. That's the first step. The next step is there's actually foundries coming into the US and being built up there, so then we can close the gap there, which means the foundries probably still buy material from overseas, but slowly but surely we have to get this all to here. Because the interesting thing, and I don't think people realize that, is we have all these raw materials here in the country. We just have to get up like our supply chain going in the right way. And that needs alignment. And that kind of ties back to, I guess, where you were coming from with chemistries. Like, we have to also have a strategy on, which chemistries do we want. And I still see some innovation that can happen on certain, on material level and this and that, but still we want one path forward where we don't have like 15 different options, because that's not going to allow us to scale fast.
Excellent. And I mean, this was not something I was prepared to talk about today, but one of the things that I nerd out over is anytime a CEO at an earnings call talks about the production process, or there's a video of them showing their new line off, or
Right.
So maybe if you don't mind, maybe I can invite you back on and we could talk a little bit more about this, because I think that's super awesome. In regards to a talk you gave recently on, the talk was entitled "A Comprehensive Risk Mitigation Plan for Battery Safety." Can we talk about that a little bit?
Right. So, battery safety, that is a very huge topic, right? So anything that we do today in terms of the chemistries that we have for large scale batteries, but then also look at phones and laptops, we have this fire risk. It's there. It's something that exists, and something we will not be able to avoid 100% ever, probably, unless we really move to chemistries that just can't catch fire, which they exist, but they just can't be condensed into these high energy formats that we need. So personally, I believe we'll never be able to avoid a safety incident. So we'll have to find ways to mitigate that and really take it all the way back to even like the manufacturing. So we had the battery show in Detroit, which is an industry gathering that happens every year. And it's like one of the biggest conferences in this industry. And so there was this battery safety and workshop, and we all came together laying out, what needs to happen. And safety is something that really affects all of us. It's safety during the manufacturing of battery cells, modules, and packs. It's safety for anybody that has their batteries in cars, in energy storage systems, backups, and so on. But then it's also safety to those in the emergency response situations like you have been, right? So, and I don't think there is a way today that like any type of state of the art approach how we can handle battery fire. Like, there's products out there. There's different things that people have done with water, with fire blankets, with you just mentioned burying a battery on fire. So there's a lot of different options today. There's no state of the art. And so the thing that we were talking about is really that we have to come together, lay out the workflows that are actually happening and need to happen, and then also products that can be applied in certain situations. So that's something that I'm working on right now together with a bigger team in the industry, like companies and people who design batteries, because we have to think about that from the very beginning, right? Up until, firefighters and emergency response teams who have to go in and handle fires at some point.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's a couple of different. There's Rosenbauer puts out this device that you slide underneath the car and it punctures the battery pack, but then that could cause problems later for other cells and still reignite
Right.
the battery pack. The fire blankets. I was on a fire. This facility was taking batteries out of vehicles. The Ford. I can't remember wasn't Taurus, but one of the first electrified Ford cars, sedans. They were taking those batteries out, and then they were either recycling the cells or reusing them somewhere else. But that caught on fire, and they brought in fire blankets, and that worked great. But now they won't let us, in the system that I work in, they won't let us use fire blankets anymore because all of the gases get trapped, and
Right.
they're concerned when you lift that up, you're going to basically get cancer and die, which I guess is a valid concern.
Right.
So, and then you have Cobra. Have you seen Cobra?
Cobra?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like this. It's like like a pressure washer. Like when somebody pressure washes their car or their house or whatever. It's kind of like a pressure washer on steroids, and it like shoots into the battery pack from the floorboard of the car with such high pressure water that it just penetrates.
Right.
And I know there's at least one department in the valley where I work that has those. And I had a chance to go see a demonstration, but then I had another thing I had to do instead. But like, there's all of these kind of cool technologies, but they're cool technologies that you kind of have to deploy from the outside in, which causes more disruption inside that battery pack.
Right.
Is there anything that you know of that can be done at the pack level to kind of help these things?
Let me explain this, because I think it's so important for people that are not as deep in the battery technology as I am, or potentially also you are. I just want to explain the difference between what's called a thermal runaway, which is really this exothermic reaction that a cell goes through, and like an individual cell, versus, the whole propagation through the module and pack, which is a different thing. So let me walk us through this. So the reasons we see fires are manifold. Like, it actually can be triggered internally from an individual cell without us having done anything to it, because at some point during the manufacturing, there was a problem. There was something introduced that shouldn't be there, but we just didn't catch it at that time. And then, of course, there's outside impacts that can happen, like an intrusion or actually a fire, and then like some type of outside trigger. And I think the interesting thing is, in any case, what happens, you have an internal short of at least one cell. So what you don't want in a cell is the anode and cathode plus and minus to touch, because then you have an internal short. You have a reaction where within seconds, it's exothermic. You cannot stop it. There's nothing you can do. And within seconds, the temperature is raised to over 1,000 degrees. And also you have gases coming out of this cell, which are toxic. So that's something on the cell level, which can happen due to different things, and you cannot stop it on the cell level. Absolutely no way. But if you think about it, so an individual battery cell in an EV or energy storage system, if this one cell has a problem, it's actually not that big of a deal. It could be, just a little fire at that time. The problem is when it propagates, because due to this cell getting hot or the gases ejected to another cell, they can all get kind of infected, affected, and then it propagates through the module and the pack. And this is what leads to those catastrophic events, and also is the reason why it takes so much more water and so much longer than any other, like any gas car, to put the fire out, because it's a chain reaction, one after the other. And what you do when you put water on is you might be able to stop it, but probably you just slow it down. So overall, it actually takes even longer when you put water on. But so anyways, what I want to come back to is there's a lot that you can do in the design of your module. So as soon as you put cells together into modular packs, there's a lot that you can do in the design of that, like adding material between the cells, being extremely smart about the integration and design, mechanical, thermal, and with different concepts to actually stop the propagation. And this is something that's being looked at in this industry heavily at the moment, also because in China, there's a new regulation that was put in place where any OEM on the pack level, they now have to go through a test where there is one cell is put on fire in a sense, or triggered, and they have to show that within 2 hours there is no fire and no propagation. So, and that's big. It's nothing that it's mandatory yet in North America or Europe, but from my experience, taking myself back probably 7-8 years, we have seen something like that happen, and it kind of trickles to us, right? So there's a high chance that battery modules packs for any type of applications will get safer over time. And there's going to be some type of innovations there and things that they can do. And I can't talk about those specific things because they're proprietary information at that time. But there's things that you can do to stop the propagation.
That's cool. In the test that you were talking about in China, when BYD put out their new Blade battery, they demonstrated like shooting a spike through it.
Right.
Is that a real test, or is that just like
it's one of the tests.
Marketing.
So there is something called like standards and regulations in this industry. So depending on where you market your or sell your application, you have to be like applying those or conform with those standards and regulations. And there's a whole slew of them. And it tells you what you need to do in terms of testing. And one of the tests is what they call a nail penetration test. Okay, hit a nail through a cell, and then, like I said, what would actually happen is anode, cathode are touching, internal short, and you have a problem. So that's one of the things that you can trigger a cell into a thermal runaway. It's one of the things, one of the tests. Another test, though, is actually putting the battery on fire.
Nice.
Externally. So I wonder what would happen if they showed that type of test. So there's just lots of different ways that you then have to do those tests and show that nothing is going to happen.
This is so cool. I could literally talk to you about all this stuff, from the production to this. I do want to ask one more question, and then we'll get to the Electrification Academy. Are dendrites still a problem? When I first started the podcast in 2016, it seemed like maybe they got blamed more than they should have. I don't know how prevalent it was early in the batteries. cells versus now. But are they kind of solving for that with like the different additives they can put in the chemistries? Or
Yes, but they still are, yes, because also the cells that we see today in our EVs, they're old designs in a way, right? So also think about when there's maybe we have now materials and combinations of materials where dendrite growth is not suppressed, but much less likely for this to be integrated into a car or any type of application that somebody has right now. It takes years and years and years. So yes, it's still a problem, but also yes, there are ways not only on the material side, but then also how we exactly cycle batteries and things like this to limit that. But we can still blame them. It's okay.
okay. And if it, for those who don't know, a dendrite's like this little spiky, almost like a tree root type system that can occur in the battery, and then it can cause a short.
Right. And it can also be triggered by a defect that happened during manufacturing. Like really, just think cell manufacturing. Think of people in suits, dry rooms, humidity control. Like they're so sensitive. I mean, I once talked to a lady and she was like, I wish I could spit on a battery during manufacturing and it still worked. It doesn't. Like it's so sensitive to
Oh,
the
wow.
tiniest imperfections and particles and dirt, anything. So anything that can get in there can be a trigger of something like a dendrite at some point too.
That's so interesting. I know we're at 42 minutes, so I'm going to stop because I could have questions all day long. So why don't we talk a little bit about, we'll start off with Electrification Academy, and then we'll go into Electrified Veronika and all the fun stuff that you're doing on your channel.
Cool. Yeah. So Electrification Academy is my biggest initiative project that I've ever started. It's like also my first real startup experience where now I'm creating a business from scratch with a team. Before then I've been self-employed. I've worked in a corporate, but now this is my first kind of startup experience. And Electrification Academy is what I call a B2B knowledge hub. So it's a combination of an education space and a B2B marketplace for, at some point in life, all things electrification, but right now very much focused on battery technology, just because, as we all know now, I'm a battery person. But we are expanding very soon into, e-motor technology and then also beyond that. But so what is it and why did I create it? It's a place, you can look it up, electrification-academy.com, where people can find application oriented information. And it's for free. It's a free resource for anybody to learn about this industry. And there's more and more topics that we're kind of building out and curating in there. And the important thing is, from an education perspective, it's not fundamental information or theoretical information or anything like that, because also kind of talking about AI, you can ask ChatGPT about all the different things of battery chemistries and this and that, and it's going to be extremely accurate actually. But what's missing in terms of information for this industry is like industry workflows. How are things being done hands-on, be it battery recycling, be it cell manufacturing, module development, step by step explanations of what is being done in this industry, where do we see challenges and innovations, and just holistically lay out options that this industry is working on. And the unique thing about it is that we're combining it with a B2B marketplace, which means we are also working with companies who have products, equipment, software, services, and we tie them into the process and show them there. And everything is curated by real people, by experts of this industry. And it should really just serve as a resource for people, like an entry door to this industry.
Yeah, and every lesson, module, article is written by somebody who's an expert in that space. These are easy to read. These are, like, I signed up for this. I think I emailed you maybe a month ago now. And I signed up for this the day I emailed you. And I was like, this is so cool. There are so many things that maybe the average person wouldn't have access to or even know that they needed access to learn about this stuff. And it's just like, boom, right here. All you got to do is a little bit of reading, and they're not heavy. It's not a heavy read. It's pretty easy to understand.
Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, just coming back to that comment about the experts. So that was something that was really important to me because as a consultant, and also watching this industry for the past 5 years, probably on LinkedIn, there's lots of people out there that they now think that they're all of a sudden experts. And then um, when you look at their history, you will see that they don't have that hands-on or application experience. And so for me, it was very important to find people and work with people who have done that. So we have people in our team, and they're all independent consultants who have manufactured battery cells at Tesla, at Apple, at Northvolt. They have recycled. Like, those people do have this industry experience. They have gone through everything that could go wrong, and they're now ready to share those lessons learned and help us avoid going through that same mess again.
Yeah. No, this is cool. Like, I don't know why, but battery technology is something that is like the motors are interesting, but I'm not as interested in that. I want to know more about what's going on with batteries, and this is a perfect resource. From here, why don't we talk a little bit about Electrified Veronika and how people can kind of get a hold of you, or follow you on LinkedIn, or however you would like to do that.
I mean, Electrified Veronika is really the brand that I created, and it's my consulting business for 5 years now. Best way to reach me is probably LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn a lot, but I also have a YouTube channel. Like, if you type in Electrified Veronika and also electrifiedveronika.com, you will find me. You will find what I do and also the consulting that I offer, but also the kind of communication and marketing support that I give. But I will say that a lot of what I do is now kind of tied to Electrification Academy more and more. And it was a way for me to scale my consulting services as we come together with different experts in different fields. Now I can even take on bigger projects where it just needs more expertise than the expertise that I have.
Veronika, thank you so much for coming on and being really generous with your time. I think I told you, usually 30-ish minutes or so. Plan an hour just in case of technical difficulties, and I've kept you for quite a bit longer. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Grief doesn't keep a calendar. Anxiety doesn't clock out after 5. Depression doesn't care if it's your busy season. But support can still fit into your life. With Grow, you can find a therapist who meets you where you are. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions. You can search by insurance, provider specialty, treatment methods, and more to find a therapist who works for you. And if it's not the right fit, switching is easy. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Find therapy on your time. Evenings, weekends, and cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/ACAST today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/ACAST. growtherapy.com/ACAST. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
At Capella University, learning online doesn't mean learning alone. You'll get support from people who care about your success, like your enrollment specialist who gets to know you and the goals you'd like to achieve. You'll also get a designated academic coach who's with you throughout your entire program. Plus, career coaches are available to help you navigate your professional goals. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
All right, everybody. How great was that interview? It was fantastic. I think everybody should go and check out Electrified Veronika. And Veronika's also on LinkedIn. I will go ahead and put links in the show notes to her LinkedIn profile, as well as links to the Electrification Academy. And Veronika's book is called The Drive to Electric: How Innovative Minds Are Shaping Our Future. You can pick it up on Amazon. It's in Kindle and paperback. And, Christmas is coming up. There might be somebody in your life that would enjoy this book. Check it out. All right, everybody. That is it for me. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. And if you want to email me, it's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. You can also find me on X at 918digital, although I don't really do anything on X anymore. It's not for any political reasons. It's just I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. I do enjoy hanging out on LinkedIn, and I post there more often than I do on X, although it's still not very often. But if you want to check me out on LinkedIn, you could do so. And then, I hope I'm still trying to get my website reactivated after I got some messages that on an email account I don't monitor that the credit card or debit card had wasn't being charged, and I had some fraud on my debit card a couple months ago, and I didn't check it. So they said email us and we'll reactivate it for you, and I haven't heard back. Hopefully that will get corrected soon. Otherwise, I'll just have to start over. So, which is a bummer because I don't have a lot of time for that right now, but it is what it is. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.
At Capella University, learning online doesn't mean learning alone. You'll get support from people who care about your success, like your enrollment specialist who gets to know you and the goals you'd like to achieve. You'll also get a designated academic coach who's with you throughout your entire program. Plus, career coaches are available to help you navigate your professional goals. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.